pile of shit. This fucking virus is ruining everything. Well, I guess the show must go on, so hopefully that means that this thing will have more time till November, but this does throw a spanner in the works. But regardless, let's get to the Roger Moore films. I really like Roger Moore as Bond. In all honesty, I do prefer Connery and Brosnan, and I'm not sure about Craig yet, but the thing about Roger Moore Bond films is that they're always fun. They always have unique concepts, great action pieces, fantastic one-liners, and they feel like great entertainment. These films are never trying to be more than what they are, which is what I love about them. So I'll talk about what I think of Moore as Bond throughout the review, because this story is one that starts out great, but kind of falls at the final hurdle. But let's get underway with Live and Let Die is a film that I enjoy the hell out of. The film is the third Bond film directed by Guy Hamilton, and it takes on the look and feel of a blaxploitation movie. The sets, the costumes, the music all combine to give this movie such a great feel. The start is such a great setup for the story as we see various black groups taking out MI6 officials, and then we get the titles with probably the most famous James Bond song in Live and Let Die. I love the funk music as well, which goes with the score, and I mean, just listen to how good the gun barrel sounds. Our new Bond introduction, however, is not great. Every Bond is introduced in the middle of a mission or in a situation showing off their personality, but Moore's intro is really lame. He's just in bed and then M and Moneypenny come in, and right from the get-go you can tell that their chemistry is nowhere near what Connery had. You'd think it would improve, but if anything it kind of got worse as it went along. And with M too, for that matter. I do love the moment where M gets pissed off with Bond.
Powerful enough to even deflect the path of a bullet. At long range. Or so Q claims.
I feel very tempted to test that theory right now.
But this brings up my first complaint with Moore's Bond. Moore is not as vulnerable as Connery was, which is kind of my problem with him in general. There weren't a lot of situations where his mannerisms portrayed that there was legitimate danger or he was out of his element. He always played him a little too cool and controlling for my like. He is great at doing that, but it was kind of all the time. Like in this scene here, grit your teeth, man. Yaphet Kotto, who you might remember from Alien, is the villain, playing Kananga, who runs a drug smuggling ring in New York despite operating out in the Caribbean. The setting of Upper Manhattan and the Bronx is fantastic, and the style of the early 70s is just so cool. Jane Seymour is the Bond girl solitaire here, and she's like a fortune teller with her cards, and I love the look in her introduction when Bond picks up the lover's card. Also, the costume design is marvelous. The look of Baron Samedi is so unique and wonderful, and also when they sneak around the rooms here, it's a lot more interesting than when Connery would do it. The close-ups really helping, and Moore's expression selling the I gotcha. So we meet Rosie, a double agent, and then they get on a boat with Quarrel from Dr. No's son, and then Rosie dies before Bond sneaks into Solitaire's room, and then he tricks an unwilling woman into giving him her virginity and her powers. Oh, James. Oh no. I kinda love Roger Moore's face when she's getting all philosophical on him and he's kinda just like, darling, it's just sex. And then they escape, running into the greatest character in the James Bond franchise.
Good morning, boss.
Morning.
It's sure going to be a beautiful day. Yes, sir, a beautiful day.
The bus chase is absolutely terrific, and there's that fantastic moment of going under the bridge, which always makes me laugh.
Today is your lucky day, Jim. You're going skydiving.
Well, to be fair, Jimothy.
The plane car chase with Mrs. Bell is really funny, and it's simply Guy Hamilton flexing how good he is at directing vehicular chase scenes. Then we see Mr. Big, who's like the Sly Stallone of black people again, who surprise was Kananga the whole time by using the same method Doc Brown did in Back to the Future 2. So while he was running a heroin ring, he was also ruling a country.
And we thought this president was shady.
Also, they kind of let Bond walk with Solitaire, making a 50-50 guess on the matter, and then they take him to a crocodile fan, which is a great sequence. I know that it is kinda like this.
I'm going to place him in an easily escapable situation involving an overly elaborate and exotic death.
To kill him, but it's incredibly tense, and the stunts of the crocodiles is amazing. Like, only Tom Cruise would do something like that now. Then we get Sheriff J.W. Pepper, who's kind of infamous amongst Bond fans for being kind of the Jar Jar Binks of the series, and yeah, his humour does go a bit over the top, but I don't mind a bit of off-colour humour. But the highlight of the film is here, and it's that boat chase, which is brilliantly done. The chase goes on for the perfect amount of time. It has incredible stunts, great little bits of humour, and it gives us this line, which I absolutely love.
Secret agent? On whose side?
We get the final showdown with the cult of
Voodoo Mama Juju!
about to burn solitaire, and the greatest movie character of all time, Baron Samedi, shows up again. So I guess magic and all this stuff really does exist in James Bond. Then they blow up the heroin plantation before they have a fun little duel with Kananga. They blow him up, and then we get another fight with Teehee before Bond kicks him out the window. And then after the fight is done, the window is fine. And then we get the greatest ending in cinema history when it's revealed that the one and only dad, Baron Samedi, is still alive. But in all seriously, I really enjoy Live and Let Die. The action scenes are all great. Roger Moore is charismatic and charming. Solitaire is one of the more interesting Bond girls. The villains are awesome. Kananga, Mr. Big, Teehee, Baron Samedi, to name the main ones, but there's also Rosie, Whisper, and the cab driver, who all get great little moments. So, to me, Live and Let Die gets an 8 out of 10. Time for some schlock.
The man with the golden gun.
The Man with the Golden Gun is fun, and much like Live and Let Die is unapologetic for what it is, this has the same thing, which is what I like about it. It has some extremely bizarre elements, but it never plays it as anything it isn't. We're introduced to our villain Scaramanga, played by the excellent Christopher Lee, who's our triple nipple nemesis who kills the guy from Diamonds Are Forever. Also, just a small bit, there's like a weird moment where the mannequin blinks here. We get our opening credits, which is kind of infamous for being extremely trashy, and yeah, it's pretty bad. Bond finds out that Scaramanga is after him and goes to find the bullet with some exotic dancer. Bond threatens to shoot the manufacturer in the nuts, then tricks a hotel staff into opening the door to the room of a showering lady. Bond taking the moral high ground in all those situations. So Scaramanga kills this guy who MI6 have been after in regards to an energy device, and it's revealed that Scaramanga is contacted a guy named High Fat, which is the name of my local Asian grocer. Bond then gets taken to the Hong Kong agency to the hollowed out Queen Elizabeth, where M still wants Bond dead.
I almost wish that Scaramanga had a contract on you.
And then Bond is about to get killed by 2 sumos and a little person. Just let that sink in. Then High Fat tells him to take him to school. I love this moment when Bond wakes up and he thinks he's in heaven, and then a bunch of guys in karate uniforms come in and he goes, just fucking kill me now. Then he beats him up, and this little bit irks me because why couldn't he have just waited 2 seconds for Bond to get in the car? However, the boat chase is extremely fun. Some lovely racist humour with the little kid.
I'll tell you what, Sonny, I'll give you 20,000 baht if you can make this heap go any faster.
20,000 baht.
I'm afraid I have to owe you.
And then...
Goddamn! Little brown waterhole! Oh, what's the matter, J.W. Huh? You just try that in my bayou, boy! I'd hold your ass!
We get this weird moment where Bond hooks up with 2 girls in the same bedroom, and then skip. We get the fantastic car chase, where once again Guy Hamilton does another awesome job with the car chase. The fast-paced camera through the bustling streets, and of course one of the greatest stunts in the entire franchise. Heck, cinema for that matter, with that car flip.
Never heard of Evel Knievel?
Bond goes to Scaramanga's island and he finds out that he has a solar energy facility which he plans to sell to the highest bidder, and Scaramanga wants Bond because they are the best, leading to the fun duel and Bond cleverly using his own mannequin to kill Scaramanga. However, this following little fight with Knick Knack is stupid and lacks any tension, unlike the Teehee fight in Live and Let Die. But I do like this film because it's unapologetic for what it is. It has fun and it's entertaining. Some elements are extremely campy, yes, but this is a Roger Moore Bond film. What were you expecting? The film has great action, a mostly intriguing story, and of course a memorable villain. And to me, that's what a Bond film needs, with plenty of other bits scattered throughout. So, 7 out of 10. Now we move on to what is considered to be Moore's best. This is easily one of the best Bond films. It has all the elements, but this one is able to find the perfect balance in terms of tone. Nothing feels too campy and nothing is too serious. The film is one of the best pre-title sequences, setting up the story with Bond killing Barsov, aka Agent XXX. No, not that one. Like, that would be weird as fuck. Bond killing her lover before we get to one of the most iconic moments in the franchise with Bond and the Union Jack parachute. The titles are also really great despite not having a particularly James Bond style song, but it's still one of the best. Get our intro, and this movie's MacGuffin is a microfilm with a device that can track submarines. We're introduced to our villain Carl Stromberg, who pops his assistant in a shark tank as well as blowing up 2 scientists. Also, props to the stunt woman here because I would never tempt fate like this. Also, is it just me, or do you feel like every time they cut back to Stromberg it should do this?
Meanwhile, at the Legion of Doom.
So Bond meets our film's main Bond girl Anya, played by Ringo Starr's wife Barbara Bach, as they fight the best villain of the movie, Jaws, played by Richard Kiel.
Is this your ball?
Yes, it is.
It struck my foot.
And they have some cat and mouse around Cairo. Eventually they end up in the boot of Jaws' car, and we get this nice little moment which is like an "oh James" moment, and not one of those "oh James" like in Thunderball. They escape from Jaws after getting the microfilm, and Bond makes a sexist joke while acting like a bitchy driving school instructor.
Women drivers.
Quiet.
The Bond School of Driving. Learn to eject. Drive recklessly. Flip your car. Drive it into the sea. Manage the busy streets and disrupt innocent people's livelihoods. And if you don't have any money, alternate arrangements can be made.
Shaken, but not stirred.
Bond has the same reaction that the audience does to the shaken and stirred joke. We find Q Branch working on the Red Wedding setup. Eventually they get on a train and head to Sicily? I don't fucking know. I was distracted. Jaws attacks them, and then we get a cool fight before Bond pulls a rock and electrifies him. Then we get introduced to one of the best Bond cars, the Lotus Esprit. They go to Stromberg's, and when they get back, Stromberg orders his minions to kill him. And then we get an awesome car chase with the Esprit. Also, props to the pilot who did this incredible chopper turn. Then they go into the ocean, and we get that iconic underwater fight scene before they convene with the US military. They're captured and go to Stromberg's base on a ship, and it turns out he wants to build an underwater paradise. We get a cool battle on the ship between Stromberg's forces and the British Navy, and then they reroute the sub-nukes to hit each other. Also, they wouldn't arc on the map like that. They would just head in a straight line. Eventually Bond does away with Stromberg by shooting him in the dick a couple of times, then frees Anya's, and then the two get caught by their agency before Bond chucks the blinds back down and goes to town. So this movie is a ton of fun. As I said before, it gets our tonal balance great. The action is spot on. However, there are two major issues for me. Stromberg is a pretty uncompelling villain, and he doesn't get enough development to actually be a proper threat apart from he's rich. Goldfinger was rich, but he had the setup where we knew that he was intellectually superior to Bond and was also handy in a fight. Also, Bach and Moore's chemistry isn't too great in the film. She's also completely absent from the third act when she's been touted as Bond's Russian equal. It would have been nice to see her actually kick ass for a bit, not just tied up in a revealing outfit, but all complaints aside, this is a classic Bond film. It's more at its best, and I'll give it another 8 out of 10. So you'll notice that the next film advertised to be released was For Your Eyes Only. However, the producers didn't anticipate the success of a little film called Star Wars. Then they went into a frenzy and put the For Your Eyes Only script to the side, and instead decided to go forward and capitalize on the Star Wars success with... So Moonraker's kind of infamous because when you ask a James Bond fan what's the craziest Bond movie, chances are they'll say Moonraker. So as I said, this film was a quick response to Star Wars, and the film does feel a little rushed. The production isn't at all. All the sets and the miniatures of the spaceship look incredible, same with the production design. But the script, it's just The Spy Who Loved Me with a different skin, and I'll point out the similarities later. But Moonraker's pre-credit scene is pretty good. We start with a Moonraker shuttle getting hijacked, and then we get Bond vs Jaws in an epic freefall fight with some incredible stunt work. I also love the moment where Jaws pulls out his cord and the stunt guy's reaction is amazing. Then we get one of the weirdest and worst Bond songs. I mean, Shirley Bassey is an incredible singer, but the lyrics don't make a goddamn lick of sense.
Zig Heil! Zig Heil! Zig Heil!
Moore does look a little old here, which is kind of strange considering another 3 films followed this, and he was already 52. Like, he's 3 years older than Connery, and that's just in general. Bond goes to the shuttle manufacturer Hugo Drax, played by Michael Lonsdale, but I've also heard it pronounced as Michelle, so... Also, I'd like to point out how amazing the miniature set of Drax Industries looks. We get a tense scene of Bond in the G-Force, and Bond meets this film's Bond girl, Holly Goodhead. Man, really scraped the bottom of the barrel for that one. Then Bond hooks up with Drax's assistant Corinne. She drops this truth bomb on him.
I never learned to read.
And you know what the worst part of all is? I never learned to read.
And then the next day she is killed in a scene straight out of the Stepford Wives by Drax's dogs. Afterwards, Bond goes to Venice, where the movie gets extremely wacky. He researches a lab developing a poison toxin, and that has a strange gondola chase with that infamous double-take pigeon. Like, this is one of the least secret agent things you could do. He makes a big fuss of being in disguise here, but here? Says wave at all the tourists. He follows the shipments to Rio, and then we get an alright cable car scene, where afterwards Jaws falls in love? It comes completely out of left field. This cold-blooded killer shut down like that. Then Holly gets kidnapped so the third act can happen, and then, hang on, what movie am I watching? Then we get another action scene where Jaws and his cronies chase Bond, but it's nowhere near as engaging as the one in Live and Let Die, and Jaws is just becoming Wile E. Coyote. The action at this point is just action for the sake of action. It's not furthering the story enough to be necessary. Sure, the stunt work is great, but it always has been, so the scene just kind of falls flat. And then we find Drax's paradise, and it turns out that he's sending people to space to kill Earth's population and start anew like Noah's Ark. Also, Drax's base, tell me that doesn't look familiar. However, the scenes of the ships going up to the space station are beautiful, and once again the design of the miniatures is spectacular. So then they've got a new Death Star, and then Jaws flips sides on the very loose assumption that Drax will kill he and his girlfriend. Bond and the US military attack the space station, and Bond kills Drax in a really great death scene, and then the space station blows up like the Death Star. Then Bond has a scene extremely similar to the trench run, where he blows up the final probe with the toxic gas, before getting it on with Goodhead in front of the President and the Queen. Could you imagine Jimmy Carter and Queen Lizzie seeing that? So Moonraker is a hard one to rate. There are some incredible visuals and action scenes. Drax is a solid Bond villain, and Holly is a good Bond girl. But the problem is that this is just the spy who loved me with a new skin slapped on. Instead of XXX, it's Holly. Drax and Stromberg are both eccentric billionaires who just want to start a new civilization by killing millions. Jaws is there as they chase the MacGuffin around. We get two major forces facing off in the third act. Just replace water with space, and the final acts are the same, with the massive stations and the easily disposing of the villain. Also, there are very obvious Star Wars comparisons as well. I think they should have gone with For Your Eyes Only and spent a bit more time working on this film's script, as it's obvious their plans were changed because of Star Wars. So I'll give Moonraker a 6 out of 10. However, did you ever wonder what it would be like if Blofeld had somehow returned? Well, get ready for the conclusion you didn't know you didn't want with... This movie is okay. It's kind of what you think of when you hear standard James Bond adventure, but unfortunately the plot is pretty uncompelling. They have to get this device called an ATAC while this film's Bond girl Melina tries to get revenge on the drug lords who killed her family. The opening is one of the strangest pre-title sequences. Apparently Blofeld returned and he hijacks Bond's helicopter, flying him around for a bit, and then Bond foils his plans and drops him down a chimney. It's like the writers are like, we know you didn't like this payoff in Diamonds Are Forever, so we'll cram an equally, if not worse, payoff. It's a terrible, clumsily put together scene. You don't see his face, just his head and the cat. Also, Blofeld might be the worst negotiator of all time. Like, you'd think an evil genius would be a little better at bargaining than this. Also, I know die-hard Bond fans might not like this, but Blofeld's just not a great character at all. Really, the only reason he has a major impact on Bond as a character is that he killed Tracy. And it wasn't even him, it was Bunt. He's the leader of an organization full of inept people. He just gets panicky as soon as he's compromised. In On Her Majesty's Secret Service, he doesn't realize that Bond's sitting right in front of him. And then in Diamonds Are Forever, he acts like a goof and gets rammed into an oil rig. And then here he leaves an exposed cable so Bond can just easily dump him down a chimney. For a guy that's touted as Bond's arch nemesis, this guy's an absolute spud. So anyway, this film's MacGuffin is the ATAC, a device that can communicate with Polaris submarines. Fuck, these movies love their MacGuffins, don't they? I don't have a lot to say about this film. I like the car chase. It's a classic Bond, and the little look Bond gives to the henchman is great. And I also love the rock climbing sequence. It's really tense and has great stunt work. However, the story's just extremely bland, the villains are super forgettable, the film has a twist villain with Kristados, who poses no physical or intellectual threat to Bond. He's just a guy in possession of the device and that's it. The whole element of BB as well is strange. Bond gets molested by her. How does it feel, James? And then her teacher tries to save her, which kind of makes me think of... The Bill Conti score is pretty great, but no other elements are particularly interesting. It's just another stock standard location jumping Bond film, without any of the charm of the other Roger Moore films. 5 out of 10. Luckily, they got some of that charm back with...
What is that?
That's my little Octopussy.
I must be dreaming.
Octopussy starts out with a fantastic opening credit scene with Bond infiltrating a military base before blowing it up. The setup for the story is really intriguing, with 009 assassinated in East Berlin before we get another MacGuffin with the Fabergé egg. We also find out the Soviet general Orlov is planning to start a war by detonating a nuclear bomb in Berlin, also stealing and smuggling art with the help of exiled Afghan Prince Kamal Khan. And from there we get a really neat story. The location of India is really fun, makes for a great tuk-tuk chase through the crowded streets with Indian tennis player Vijay Armitage. Also, at times this film does feel like Temple of Doom, but it's kind of strange considering that film came out a year after this, so... We get a fun scene of Bond getting hunted for sport by Khan's forces, eventually escaping and making his way to Octopussy's island of women. Octopussy is played by Maud Adams, who you might remember from The Man with the Golden Gun. Bond eventually going to Berlin, where Khan is planning to plant a bomb at one of the Octopussy's circuses, and then we get a fantastically tense scene of Bond racing there, driving on train tracks, getting into a fight on top of the train, the car chase before the brilliant ending, where Roger Moore really seems desperate for once as the bomb is about to go off in seconds. Then they go back to India to confront Khan, and it is a little schlocky with all these exotically dressed women. And then Q comes in, which is cool to see. But I love everything about the finale on the plane. The fantastic stunt work, the bit where Govinda has to go out on the plane, and that ending with Khan crashing and Bond and Octopussy barely escaping. So Octopussy is actually a really fun James Bond film. Some elements are pretty schlocky, but on the whole it makes for a really entertaining watch. Octopussy is one of the best Bond girls, Kamal Khan is a great villain, I love the whole third act of the film as well. So I was flipping between a 6 or a 7, but I'll give it a 7 out of 10. So it's argued that Moore should have finished here. However, he did one more, and well... what we got was... weird. A View to a Kill is perhaps the most weirdly wonderful Bond movie there is. To explain it, I'm just going to have to go through the film in full. So it starts with Bond tracking down 003, who's dead. He has a microchip with him before being pursued by some skiers. The chase is fine, but then the Beach Boys song kicks in. I do like the visual of the helicopter spinning out with a flare, but then Bond hops into the iceberg sub and... boy, Roger Moore got old. Every time he hops into bed with someone in this film, you just feel slimy watching him, as he makes out with girls 30 years younger than him. But the opening credits of this film are actually awesome. The Duran Duran song, the visuals with the girls with the phosphorescent paint on them. It makes for a great opening. So the microchip Bond found was manufactured by our villain Max Zorin, played by the always brilliant Christopher...
I got a fever. What my ass? What we do? I want to be like you.
He meets up with this guy Aubergine at the Eiffel Tower and says that Zorin's horses are for sure cheating. But before he can divulge more information, he is killed by Mayday. Then we get a fantastic action scene around the Eiffel Tower, Bond getting into a taxi and having a fun chase while Mayday escapes before Bond ruins a wedding. But while the action is fantastic, the stunt double for Roger Moore is glaringly obvious. Also, I just had to say how much I love the intro of Zorin and Mayday's dynamic on the boat.
So?
Then Bond goes to Zoran's estate for an auction, and this whole thing is so beautifully strange. Any interaction Roger Moore has with any human is so weird here.
You're not staying the night? I was hoping we'd spend the evening together. Now I shall be all alone.
Like, the guy is just a total sleazebag. Also, if you look closely, you'll notice Jenny Flex is played by everyone's favourite sexy Nazi, Alison Doody, aka Elsa from The Last Crusade. I reckon Spielberg might have actually been a Bond fan. That night Bond sneaks into a place, yada yada yada, but what is most important is one of the most bizarre moments in movie history. And then we get one of the most bizarre moments in movie history. So the next day, Zoran plans to kill Bond, and he gets him into a calamity on a colt before getting chucked into a lake. Also, this little moment of sucking the air out of the tires is kind of brilliant, if you can actually do that. Zoran's plan is to disrupt the San Andreas Fault and flood Silicon Valley so him and his cronies can control the market share. Then we get one of the strangest movie title drops ever.
What of you?
So Bond meets up with Stacy, and it turns out that Zoran bought out her father's company and she's been trying to fight with him but to no avail. So they go to San Francisco City Hall where they get caught out by Mayday and Zoran. And from here we get a pretty exciting scene of Bond and Stacy escaping the building before getting into an awesome fire truck chase with the cops. The next day they head to a mine where Zoran plans to detonate the explosive. Bond and Tracy go through and compromise Zoran's plans. There's also some pretty dark stuff here where Zoran murders a bunch of his own men before Mayday sacrifices herself to get rid of the bomb. The finale of the film is really great though. The fight on the Golden Gate Bridge is really tense, and I love how Zoran has gone full psycho at this point, wielding an axe and laughing at everything. He eventually dies by falling off the bridge, and then the Zeppelin blows up before we get another uncomfortable moment with Bond and Stacy in the shower. But A View to a Kill is actually good. Yes, Roger Moore is old, but the guy is still James Bond. The big sore thumb is how obvious the stunt doubles are in several scenes, and just the obvious age difference between him and the other girls. But he's still as good as he always is. But honestly, if Dalton had been in this, it probably would have been a bit better. Honestly love the weird elements though. Mayday and Zoran might be weird, but I'd rather take strange but memorable over straight and forgettable. I love Christopher Walken in this movie, and Grace Jones is really fun as well. So with a couple of tweaks, I think this film could have been a 7, but for the time I'll give it a 6 out of 10. So that was the Roger Moore films. A really consistent run of films that did slip a little at the end, but after this film, Roger Moore decided to hang up the PPK and pass it on to our new James Bond, and that went, well, that's for part 3. So thanks so much for watching, guys. This series has been really fun to go through so far, and I look forward to continuing. Please like, share, and especially subscribe to The Young Cynics, and until next time, bye!